I repeat, that's one man that was prophesied, according to Daniel, that would be fulfilling the meaning of the word Ahmad. And that one man would bear the celestial name that means, quote, who is like Yahweh, and would be the prince with Yahweh. There's only one book of the Old Testament, of the 39 books of the so-called Hebrew prophets of the Old Testament, that sealed the certain, quote, archangel, end quote, of Daniel, that is read in chapter 12 and verse 1. And this one servant of Yahweh, also wrote himself in prophecy as the person speaking that is signified with the personal pronoun, quote, I, or the Hebrew idiom ayin, end quote. That said, he will also experience the very same spirit of Yahweh's deep sleep and total darkness. He's no different from all souls that experienced it on earth. He too went through the spirit of deep sleep, the spirit of Yahweh's deep sleep. And he did so in total darkness. However, that one servant of Yahweh also said that he will one day, at the time of the end, quote, arise, end quote, even as Yahweh ben Yahweh shined his marvelous light into the body of his very soul. And that one servant of Yahweh and the book is called, quote, Micah, or Micah, should you prefer, end quote, where that prophecy is read in chapter 7 and verse 8, that we will read for you. And I quote, rejoice not against me, O mine enemy. When I fall, I shall arise. I shall arise. When I sit in darkness, Yahweh shall be a light unto me. End of quote. Now, this verse says that, quote, Micah, end of quote, has an enemy. Anyone that has an enemy, or enemies in plural, is subject to, quote, arise, end of quote, to become a warrior and fight in battle of war against his enemy, even with a sword that is in his hand, that is carved in the shape of his tongue. In fact, the English's word, quote, arise, spelled A-R-I-S-E, end of quote, that is also found here in the book of Micah, chapter 7 and verse 8, is defined in the Encarta English's online dictionary, the 2013 edition, as, quote, to become active, to rise from a quiet, inactive, or subjugated state, to become active and vocal, end of quote. The word, quote, arise, end of quote, that is found in the book of Micah, chapter 7 and verse 8, was created by Micah and written by the hands and fingers of Micah, that came from the original Hebraic word that you can check your Strong's Concordance under reference H6965, that was written from right to left in the Hebraic manuscript, Kof, Wav, Mem Sophi, pronounced Kum, spelled with a Q, Quwm in the English translation, cum. And with that now confirmed and defined, this revelation of Micah chapter 7 and verse 8 proves that the soul of Micah, the so-called Moristite, is very much connected to both the book of Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1, as well as the book of Revelation chapter 6 and verses 5 and 6. This also confirms and affirms that the so-called, quote, archangel, end of quote, that was given the erroneous name, quote, Michael or Michael, end of quote, would be, quote, born, end of quote. He would be born on earth and will not parachute from a spaceship as the spaceship hovers over an undisclosed location on earth. Can you imagine the deception? We repeat. We want to make it clear. The so-called, quote, archangel, end of quote, that was given the erroneous name, quote, Michael, end of quote, would be born on earth and will not parachute from a spaceship in the sky over Europe or America that was expected by many Christians and Hebrew Israelites, or even appear in a cloud over an undisclosed location on earth. Did not, quote, Yahweh ben Yahweh, end of quote, come forth out of a, quote, womb, end of quote, to become known as the Son of Yahweh? Did not Yahweh ben Yahweh come forth out of a womb to become and became a stranger to his own people in the same land? According to St. John chapter 1, he did, especially verse 14. Why do you think it reads in the book of Hebrews, the book of the Hebrews, chapter 13 and verses 1 and 2. Why do you think that reads the way it does? And just for the sake of those who do not have your Bible, let us quote that for you in the book of Hebrews chapter 13 and verses 1 and 2 that reads, quote, let brotherly love continue. And verse 2, and be not forgetful to entertain strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares, end of quote. Do you not understand the cryptic message that is being announced in this passage? How powerful that is. Can you not see and understand that the, quote, angels, end of quote, of Yahweh are not human-like creatures that wear white gowns and have bird-like feathered wings that are attached to the trapezius of their backs and has a white mythical halo over their heads? Could you imagine the part of the back, the trapezius, having wings growing from the bone of the back of the trapezius? Whew. I am testifying to ye that you can be sitting in the same room or sitting in the same vehicle or on a city bus or at the airport or a jet aircraft as a passenger. Even on a train, you could be sitting right next to an angel and don't even know it. Why? Well, we just read it for you in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 2. Because according to other eyewitnesses, which includes many people of the world, as well as what is found in the book of Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 2, the, quote, angels of Yahweh, end of quote, are, quote, black-skinned celestial living beings, end of quote, that wear white garments with a, quote, white head lobe, end of quote, made of cloth that is wrapped around their woolly hair and looks just like an abused and hated so-called, quote, Negro, end of quote, or a hated, quote, colored person, end of quote, or, quote, an abused black person, end of quote, or a despised and hated, quote, African-American person, end of quote. And most of the male species of these, quote, angels, end of quote, wear a beard on their face. I am testifying to ye that the erroneous name, quote, Michael, end of quote, is now found in only 2 appearances in, quote, 2, end of quote, TWO, separate books among the 27 canonized books that are set in order after book number 39 of the Old Testament that is called, quote, Malachi, end of quote. That is the 1611 authorized edition of the King James Holy Bible. That's, quote, Michael, spelled M-I-C-H-A-E-L, Michael, end of quote. How it is known today, especially in the Vatican, which is an erroneous substitution of the original name. And just to reiterate, the English's name, again, Michael, was placed there by those 47 biblicists of King James I that translated the name from the Greek's name that is found in reference G 3413 was concordance, pronounced Mikael or Mikael, Greek. And that was done by the order of the CTE, by the way. CTE, which stands for the Council of Trent Empire, during the 16th century. Do your homework and study. Research it for yourself and confirm it for yourself. This Greek word, or the change of Mikael or Michael or Mika Yahweh, that the Greeks call Mikael or Mikal, reference Strong's reference number 3413, G3413, was changed by the Romans. First changed by the Romans, Greece. They're a bunch of liars. They changed the truth of God into a lie. Reference Romans chapter 1, verse 25 of the English's name, Michael, that actually came from the original Hebrew name, Mem Yud Kaf Yud He Wav He, Mika Yahweh. And that name means, that celestial name means, again, quote, who is like Yahweh, end of quote. However, the name Mika Yahweh was discovered by them to be part of the sacerdotal power. Oh, yes, it was. The sacerdotal power referenced the sacraments of Pope John Paul III of 1545, the 16th century, which is the belief that the propitiatory sacrifices for the transgressions of Jacob and the sins of Israel require the intervention of a certain servant of the Son Yahweh, of whom the Son Yahweh filled him full of his spirit before his ascension to pass judgment on Jacob and Israel in the last day, which is the day of judgment, or, quote, the third day. Bible reference, Micah chapter 3, verse 8. That is, it is said that the belief by all clergies of Rome, they believe it, that the soul who carries this name is prophesied to return to earth in another body in the last days with one mission and a commandment from Yahweh. Go and study the propitiatory sacrifices of the sacraments of Pope John Paul III of 1545 and bear witness for yourself. And that mission that this one soul who they expect to come back in another body that bears the name of the meaning, quote, who is like Yahweh, is to form a special segregated order of men who are described prophetically as, quote, angels, end of quote, who are historically and biblically called, quote, elders, end of quote, who are known theologically as the servants of Yahweh ben Yahweh, and who are religiously recognized as the priesthood, which will become the only ones who can commune directly with Yahweh when that time comes that is now here. I'm testifying to you right now about the sacerdotal power, which is now found hidden in allegory in two books, which are the book of Micah, chapter 5, and the book of Revelation, chapter 12. Both that describes the system of the so-called sacerdotal power, also known as the, quote, priesthood, end of quote, which is also exemplified by those priests that are mentioned in the Old Testament. I bear witness that this particular servant who is carrying the name Mem Yud Kaf Yud He Wav He, Micah Yahweh, in his soul, is now here on earth in human form that came out of a womb of a Hebrew woman during the time that he was prophesied to be born, that is now recorded in the book of Micah, chapter 7 and verse 1. And he was born under the law during the month of the law, during the 7th month, on the 15th day of the law of tabernacles. I bear witness that this particular servant who is carrying the name Mem Yud Kaf Yud He Wav He, Micah Yahweh, in his soul is walking on earth at this very end time, who is possessed with fuller power by the Spirit of Yahweh in his body, which is a body standing in height that is also prophetically described in the book of Revelation, chapter 21 and verse 17. Let him or her that can read this symbolized cryptogram do so with an understanding of erudition. You must be erudite to understand it and to comprehend what is sealed in that book of description. Meanwhile, and because the celestial name Micah Yahweh, Mem Yud Kaf Yud He Wav He, was declared by the CTE to be a theophoric name, which is defined as a title given that comes from the Greek word theophoros, Theophoritorus, I repeat, which means, quote, bearing a deity that embeds the name of the Hebrew God and discovered to be too powerful for the world of the Gentiles, they could not and did not allow the revelation of its prophetic endeavor to be known to the planet Earth.